fast evolving digital and regulatory landscape. GRC is more than something that is just a framework. No, it is an approach, a strategic one for managing risk in your organization, ensuring compliance and aligning business objectives with ethical and regulatory standards. Either you abide by this or not, you're going to be paying a huge sum of, and it's not something that should just be left alone for management alone. I mean, top management is supposed to be everybody's practice, what everybody should be aware of, what everyone is supposed to know and stay abreast of. These are evolving technologies, and as this evolves, some of these technology evolves, they also, updates the standard we work by, the framework, all the policy documents within and outside our organization. So organization adapts GRC practice not only to protect themselves from probably legal or operational, but also to build risk, customers and partners. There are some businesses that you want to do that if you don't have some of these standards or regulatory requirements, if you don't comply by them, some businesses will not do, they won't partner with you. So these are things that we need to know. So some of the things that we're looking out for in today's section is real world example of GRC, key frameworks like 27001, and also practical steps in helping us build and improve GRC practices within our organization. So I'll be bringing on board our facilitator today. His name is Kende Olo. We call him Cyber Kadabra. Cyber Juju is going to be the one who will be taking us through today's section. Kende is a senior consultant. He has a lot. His portfolio is big. If I start counting them for you, we have most of them here. But if you see this guy, every time he's always posting things on LinkedIn, WhatsApp status. Every time you're seeing certification after certification, you'll be like, is it this guy only? Why is he only writing exam? Like, God, when can I be like this guy? I also want to be at this stage where I have to start writing for you to know that the name Kadabra is not something that is just there. It's the juju of GRC, juju of compliance. So Kenya has carried out a lot of management system audit of cybersecurity frameworks, control, cloud security, name it, every part of cybersecurity that contains GRC, third-party risk analysis, risk management. He has done a lot. He has a vast understanding of cybersecurity principles, technologies, which has been applied in real-world setting in supporting organization, all these data centers. A lot of these organizations that you will not even think of, banks, a lot, name them. So you're not just getting any kind of training from someone who just speak. No, you're bringing someone with loads of knowledge, vast knowledge in cybersecurity. GRC, to be precise, is a qualified and experienced trainer. ISO 27001 with PCV and TUV. He also has a lot of certifications. He's as an auditor. I don't even know how to say that. If I start talking about him, we might not leave here today. So I'll be inviting Kenny to join us and continue from where we are now, so that we can move on with time. Thank you very much. Kenny, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me. Just give me. Okay, great. She added the juju to my name. Please just give me like few seconds. Let me put up my video, right? So that a lot of things are happening now. You don't know whether you are speaking to an AI system or you are speaking to one human being somewhere. So once you see, can you see me? Can you guys see me? Okay, great.
Kenny, we can
Good
see
afternoon.
you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Shay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. Because from our registration, we had I think 315 registrations. Yeah, 315 registrations from 18 countries. Yeah, from 18 countries. And I know some of us will be in the afternoon. Currently, some of us will be in the evening. Some of us will even be maybe at night or in the morning, right? So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Kendi Logun, just as she mentioned, right? The whole training is not about me, so it's just to also give out and then ensure people understand what governance, risk, and compliance is all about, right? I know we'll be wondering what cyber cadabra is, right? So I some time ago I was watching a video, and the guy mentioned that abacadabra means to give life, like maybe it's a Greek word or something, or maybe a philosophy around something like that. So, and I'm like, abacadabra to give life. Okay, what can I coin in cybersecurity, right? Because I learned GRC, I learned cybersecurity the hard way. Even though I had, people that brought me up, I had mentors in the field that I'm still looking up to. But I had to also work a lot of things through my way. And I'm like, how can we give life to cybersecurity? How can we give life to governance, risk, and compliance? And how can we make things simple for people to have an understanding? Because I can tell you for free, please, there might be some background noise, just accept me like that. I'm at home today, and yeah, there's some little noise around. So I was thinking that how can we make GRC and cybersecurity relatable to everyone, so that as you are coming, because most times I the problem that most people have is understanding where they are going to first, the career path. So, and how to get into some of this, this career path, right? The moment you can solve that, you have solved 80% of the problem. You know where you are going to from where you are, you solved 80% of the problem. So, and that is why trainings like this are come up, and we'll be having trainings like this subsequently also, just to ensure that we push out knowledge in cybersecurity, general knowledge, also in GRC. You also be surprised sometimes that we have people that we look up to as experts in the field, but they are confused because they may really not understand the alignment in what they are doing. You ask some people, why are you even doing GRC? Or maybe the boards of director of the organization you work in or you function in ask you that, why are you implementing the ISO 27001? And sometimes the answer will be regulatory requirement, because you do not really know the value that is gotten from what you are implementing. So you need to understand governance, risk, and compliance. You need to understand cybersecurity, and this will help you to be able to also give value to yourself, give value to your business, give value to stakeholders, whether you're a consultant or you're working within an organization, right? So, in as much as this training is focused on governance, risk, and compliance, but I've tried to put just one slide to talk about cybersecurity first. And the reason is because I mentioned that we have 315 registrations, and there were some fascinating questions, right? That makes a lot of sense to me. And a lot of them we are talking about pivoting into cybersecurity, talking about cybersecurity, talking about integration between cybersecurity and GRC, right? So I would like to just, give the foundation of where GRC sits in and what cybersecurity looks like using information security, cybersecurity color wheel. So that we just give us like a high level what cybersecurity is all about, right? And we'll be able to move on to what GRC is all about, right? So I'm an active volunteer in the cybersecurity space. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you see that I do lots of volunteering. I love to give back to the community, different associations, right? And it's also part of what we are doing currently to ensure that we can push out, and then people can ask relevant questions. People can grab, quite a lot of things around cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliance, right? So I'll just dive straight into it without wasting too much. We just want to spend, let's say, 1 hour to 1 hour 30 minutes running through the slides and asking questions, so we can allow everybody go enjoy your weekend, right? So I mentioned that we want to, look at what cybersecurity is at the high level, and this will give us insight into what risk and compliance is, right? And I've put up some looked out online, and I think this will give us an insight, right, at the high level, help us understand the different domains in cybersecurity. Because I see most people come to meet me and say, I want to do cybersecurity, I want to transition. And I ask question, Okay, what are you doing currently? Say I'm a network engineer. You are already a cybersecurity professional. If you're a network engineer, you're already doing cybersecurity. Or what are you doing? No, I'm security operations. You're already in cybersecurity, right? So when you say you want to transition, it's because you really do not have knowledge of where you function in, or you do not know that you are already a functional person within cybersecurity. Because cybersecurity is not about, those movies we watch then where you see someone just pressing the keyboard, pa, 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 and then there's one green line running through the screen and the person is hacking into a system and is doing, no, no, no. Cybersecurity is beyond that, right? Cybersecurity is everybody's contribution within an organization or within a domain, maybe a country or a continent, or even within the world at large, right? Your contribution to ensure that um, there's a safer place for everybody, cyberspace for everybody. So cybersecurity is the practice of defending the internet and its constituents. So when we say the internet and its constituents, the data, the mobile devices, even you as a person, you are part of the constituent, right, that makes up the cyberspace. So the network, the protocols, and a lot of other things. That's what cybersecurity basically means. And we have various themes in cybersecurity, and you will see why governance, risk, and compliance is very, very important in cybersecurity, and why governance, risk, and compliance is a key part, an integral part of cybersecurity. I will disappoint a lot of people today because also part of this training, we'll look at some myths, some things that people think about GRC, which is not right. Right? Whether as a professional, I see some professionals also preach about that, talk about GRC, that GRC is the GRC is that. Today I'm going to disappoint a lot of people, and I'll tell us some things that GRC is not, so that we start opening our mind to, learn and unlearn, right? So we'll start with the blue team in cybersecurity. We call them the defensive security team in cybersecurity. If you're a good football watcher, for instance, I'm a Chelsea fan. We are the best club in the world, and we have no good defenders. I still miss Kante, I still miss Rudiger, and we have someone like Cucurella currently, and a lot of other good defenders. And that is where the defensive team comes in. They sit at the back and then ensure that the attackers do not score the goal into their own goal post. That's what the defenders do, right? So, and that's what defensive security means. So they build security systems, they defend the systems, organizations against attack, and they try to ensure that people do not penetrate, right, or get access into the organization system or wherever domain that they function in. People do not get access into it. And various job roles or functions that you will see under the blue team, we have the entry-level network security administrators, we have the data security analyst, we have the junior network security engineer, we have the defense technician, security operation center analyst that we call the SOC analyst, whether it's tier 1 SOC analyst, tier 2, or tier 3. We have the threat intelligence analyst, we have the security threat analyst. So we have a lot of jobs, incident responders, serves at the blue team, right? And then we have the red team. Now, this red team, they try to act like the bad guys. The reason why the red team is different from threat actors that are outside there is because the red team is legitimate, and there is an official documentation that says you can act as the bad guy. For instance, the organization where I function, we carry out something we call VAPT, right? So vulnerability assessment, maybe on people or on systems, networks, protocols, to see whether there are vulnerabilities within the system and then whether we can penetrate, right? So, but we can do that because there's an official documentation between us and the organization. I'd say that, based on this scope, you can penetrate into the company system, right? And maybe sometimes you penetrate and you are able to move money from the finance account to another account, and they're able to see that, oh, there are lots of vulnerability in their system, right? So they try to act like the bad guys, but they are not the bad guys, right? So they are not the bad guys. So they tell you that even though you have put up a defense system within your organization, there are still some vulnerabilities that can be exploited, by external threat actors, and they can use this to, tamper with your system, or maybe part away with your money within an organization. And some of the job functions that you are going to see under the offensive security, the red team, are the ethical hackers, penetration tester, security analyst operator, assurance validator, right, and a lot of other jobs like that. We have the yellow team, right? So we have talked about the blue team, defense security. I've talked about the red team in cybersecurity, which is the offensive. Then we have the blue team. Now, if you are a web developer, you're already in cybersecurity. If you're an application developer, you're already in cybersecurity, because a lot of today now technologies and tools have made cybersecurity easy. Gone are those days where you see a security operations center analyst sitting in front of the system 24 hours looking at anomalies and looking at events and trying to triage and do a lot of things. But we have tools now that you do not even need to sit in front of the system. Ask me who is developing those tools. The yellow team, the developers, whether the application developer, the web developer, the programmer, you are within the yellow team. Also, for systems to interact within an organization, for me to be able to tell let's say I sit within the SOC team, and I need to tell somebody, maybe the SOC manager, right, that something is going on. I need a network to be able to push that communication. Now, who made that happen is the yellow team, the developer. So when you are in development, you are designing applications, you are designing systems, and you are saying you want to transition into cybersecurity, I'm telling you for free, you're already in cybersecurity. And that's where the software coders and architects come in. Your web designers, your web mobile software developers, software engineers, hardware engineers, network architects, programmers, and a lot of those other functions, right? And then we have other colors here. We have the green team. The green team is the combination of the yellow and the blue team. So this is saying you are a developer. We know you are building applications, building systems, but have the mindset, right, of have a defense mindset to say, as you are building, you want to put security in place to ensure that people do not penetrate into what you are developing, because security is not an afterthought. It's something you have to ensure that you do, right, as you are building a system, right? So, and then we have the orange team. The orange team is the combination of the red and the yellow team. So this is saying, as you're also developing, right, as you're also developing, you have the mindset of someone that is attacking a system, so that you're also able to put the best defense in place within your system, right? And then we have the purple team, which is a combination of the red and the blue team. So imagine somebody, and you are going to see someone like this especially in stock exchange companies, where they deal with large data sets, right? And then they deal with financial, like every financial application. If there's a data breach, you see somebody that is functional as a defensive person, but having an understanding of offensive security to say, even though I'm defending, right? And I think that is where Cucurella also sits in within Chelsea, because Cucurella is a defender, but that guy, you see him scoring a lot of goals. He's always pushing forward. He knows how the attackers move. He knows how they function. And once the ball is collected at the front, you see him running towards the back also. So it's a combination. One will be dominant, whether offensive will be dominant or whether defensive will be dominant. But it's a combination of both blue and the red team. Now, there's one team that I have not mentioned that sits in the heart of the cybersecurity color wheel, and I know that we are all looking at it now. And that team is the white team. And you can see that that team integrates with other teams, right? There's a touch point with the blue team, there's a touch point with the green team, there's a touch point with the red team, there's a touch point with the orange team, there's a touch point with the purple team, there's a touch point with the yellow team. And that's where governance, risk, and compliance sits, right, within cybersecurity. This is to say, you can have the defensive team and the offensive team. In fact, you can have all of these teams combined within an organization, and then you are still having problem as an organization. Why? Because there is no synergy. Everybody's working in silos. You see the defensive team doing whatever they want to do, the red team doing whatever they want to do, the green team doing whatever they want to do, and every other team doing whatever they want to do. Why? Because no integration, right? There is no team that is able to ensure that there is governance to manage each of the processes within the organization, ensure that the risks that even with the process, with the security controls that you have put in place, the risk associated with them is put in place, is well measured, and there's compliance with, let's say, internal requirements, or let's say regulatory requirements, or business requirements, or contractual requirements. And that is where the white team is. And I used to say, I stand to be corrected, right? But I used to say that the white team, governance, risk, and compliance, is the most important team within any organization that you can think of. Because without governance, risk, and compliance, whatever you are building will die in just few years, or there may be stunted growth. Why? Because we do not have appropriate governance, appropriate risk, and appropriate compliance. This is just to give us at a high level what governance, what cybersecurity looks like, right? And then where you can sit as a person within cybersecurity. So let's just go straight into governance, risk, and compliance. I hope you're able to get something from that, and we can push into governance, risk, and compliance, right? So what is governance, risk, and compliance? What is governance? What is risk? What is compliance? I will not go straight into telling you what governance, risk, and compliance is, but I'll open our eyes to some some numbers of scenarios where there was failure in governance, risk, and compliance, and it caused failure to the business and a lot of other things like that. And as we are looking at those scenarios, as a person, will start picturing what governance, risk, and compliance is, and then we'll be able to gain more knowledge and get value from this training, right? So I'll start with a scandal that happened in around 2014, 2015, right? Right, and we call that scandal the Volkswagen scandal. So these are real life scenarios, some things that happened, and the reason why I'm using them is because they are public information. You can check them online and you'll be able to see them, right? So we had something that happened in 2015, but before 2015, Volkswagen came up with something that we called an objective. And I do not think there is anything you want to do that you are not going to have an objective for doing that thing. There's an objective for this training. I have an objective to push out awareness in GRC, to also give clarity and then answer some questions. There's an objective also to why you joined. If you go to college, there's an objective as to why you're in college. If you want to get married, there's an objective. So there's always an objective for anything you want to do. And so Volkswagen, as an automobile company, as a car development company, they came up with an objective, very fantastic objective. And sometimes you can have an objective that is short term, like let's say times 6 months, sometimes 1 year. But Volkswagen had an objective, and that objective was for I think up to 2050. In fact, we are not even in 2050, we are still in 2025, right? And Volkswagen, they came up with an objective. They said they want to become a company with a net carbon neutral balance by 2050. Now, what are they saying is that they want to contribute to the Clean Air Act. They want to contribute to the Clean Air Act to say, in developing a few years ago, let's say 10, 15 years ago, we have cars that once they are on the road, they bring out gaseous substance that can be harmful to humans. And there are lots of regulations that came out to say, okay, you know what, the car that you are designing must be able to at least emit up to this. The moment it is emitting more than this, then it is not acceptable. Right. So but something happened. Volkswagen developed a particular car brand, a particular brand. So when they developed that brand, they have a fantastic objective that says in 2050 they are going to, maybe they are going to start developing cars that will not even emit any gaseous substance. Maybe just the way we have Tesla and co. They start, developing cars that run on water, cars that run on maybe electricity or other technical systems, right? Which is a very good objective, but they violated their own objective, and they violated what we call the Clean Air Act. right? And this is how they did the violation. Before you design, when you design an automobile, before you push out that automobile to the market, there's something you are going to go through that we call emission tests. So that automobile, that particular brand, we go through an emission test where it will be tested to see whether, based on the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act is it's a regulation that has been signed into law to say you cannot emit more than so and so when you are developing a car or an automobile or maybe any system that runs, right? And they cheated the emission test. So they went through the emission test, but they installed a system into that particular car that will be tested. So when they install that software will cheat the emission test to say, this is we cheat the emission test and say the car is emitting at the level that has been signed into law. But in actual reality, in actual sense, it is emitting more than that once it gets to the road, which is a cheat, right? So, and then in September 2015, there was an announcement, right, that they violated what we called the Clean Air Act by installing illegal software into these vehicles, the vehicles that they provided, that they produced at a particular time. And because they knew, because they knew that, yes, they did it, they pleaded guilty to the criminal charge, and a lot of things happened, right? They first they had to do a recall, like they had to do a recall of because they have started selling and they have sold to various companies, like a lot of countries rather. So they had to do a recall. Imagine you have sold a particular product to like 10, 20 countries, and then you have to pay, because when you are selling, the person you are selling to in the first place, they pay for shipping fee and a lot of other things that comes with selling. But now you are recalling, you are the one that will incur the charges for the shipping to come back to you. They also paid damages because you are not collecting their cars back, and you have also gone against a lot of other regulations that speaks to consumers. So they had a lot of issues there, people resigning from the company, also paying fines. They had to start settlements in billions of dollars. As at 2020, they were still paying. Imagine something that happened in 2015, and 5 years later, they were still paying, trying to close up on some of the cases. This time they pay $16 billion, another time $18 billion, another time 5 billion, 2 billion. And now consider if such organization also have an objective to say, we are going to have an annual turnover of, let's say, $300 billion. And in just 1 year, they have paid in terms of fines to regulators, to consumers. They have paid maybe even close to $100 billion. That means even their organizational objective, they will not be able to meet it. So what happened in the Volkswagen scandal? There was failure in governance, there was failure in risk management, there was failure in compliance. When I saw this, I was like, it is either a company like Volkswagen do not have a GRC function, but I do not think that will be the case, right? Because I don't think a company as global as them at that time will not have a function that tells them that what we are doing is a risk. So there's every possibility that the governing body within the business had shut the mouth of the governance, risk and compliance department. But there was governance failure because there was weak oversight and a culture that prioritized short-term profits, which allowed engineers to install software that cheated emission tests on millions of vehicles. And then there was failure in risk management. The company failed to identify and address the risk associated with manipulating emission data. Now, when you carry out risk assessment, let's say information security risk assessment or enterprise risk assessment, and you are bringing out a car, which is a product. If you carry out an assessment of risk on that particular car or on that particular product, and you're able to say what we are trying to do to cheat the emission test, the resulting effect is that there will be compliance failure. Also, we are going to lose a lot of money. Also, there will be damage to brand image. So if you have carried out that particular risk assessment on that asset that you have. If Volkswagen had done that, they would not have been in this situation, right? So the company failed to identify and address risk associated with manipulating emission data. And then there was compliance failure. Volkswagen violated environmental regulations in multiple countries, because multiple countries was not, they were after them because they had started selling the diesel vehicle to various jurisdictions, to various continents and various countries, right? So leading to billions of dollars in fines and settlements. So that is just one of it. Follow me as we go on. We have Equifax data breach, right? Equifax is more like a payment company uh, that manage finances. What happened was that there was a consumer complaint web portal. You know, when you have a business and then you have consumers, your customers are able to complain via a web portal. They are able to log in into your system, right? You have a space for them to log in into the system and they make complaints, right? So there was an initial hack via the consumer complaint web portal where the attackers used a widely known vulnerability. Now imagine there is a widely known vulnerability that has been pushed out over time, or maybe the compliance department, or maybe audit functions have even seen that, or maybe the vulnerability assessors and penetration testers have seen that, and they've mentioned that, oh, there is a vulnerability, right? So there was it was a widely known vulnerability, or maybe a vulnerability that was pushed out on a Tuesdays, just the way we usually have vulnerabilities pushed out on Tuesdays, and they failed to patch and close that vulnerability, right, due to failures in their internal processes. So the attackers, apart from the vulnerability in place that was unpatched, the attackers were able to also move laterally. It means there was no segregation within their network infrastructure to say the customer complaint reporter will sit on a particular network, and when attackers are able to come in through that network, they will not be able to move into another network without going through a particular authentication or authorization, right? So attackers were able to move laterally within the system via the web portal because there was not adequate segmentation, and they were able to find usernames and passwords that were stored in plain text. They were not encrypted on the system within the database. So there were lots of issues during the Equifax data breach, and we can read more on some of these things because they are very, very interesting and fascinating when you read up on them, right? So another thing is Equifax did not publicize the breach until more than a month, which is also against a lot of requirements, standard regulations also. For instance, in the jurisdiction where we are currently in Nigeria, you have to report any incident within the next 24 hours to, especially when you're in the financial domain, to the Central Bank of Nigeria. Whenever there's an incident, right, there's a data breach, you need to report to NDPC, you need to report to the CBN, and those are the requirements. So what happened? There was failure in governance, there was failure in risk management, there was failure in compliance within Equifax. The company failed to properly maintain its IT infrastructure, leaving a critical vulnerability unpatched for months. Assuming there was governance in IT to say there's somebody that reviews, vulnerabilities that have been documented, that reviews the process of managing vulnerabilities, right? Let's say high-risk vulnerabilities are supposed to be closed. I carried out an audit some weeks ago, and there was a high vulnerability in one of the systems. And I asked, what is the duration of closure of vulnerability, of high vulnerabilities? They mentioned 24 hours to 48 hours. And as at that time, I benchmarked when they found out the vulnerability up to when they closed the vulnerability, and it was within that duration, right? So if there was a governance system in place to govern IT, right, they would not have left that critical vulnerability unpatched. Somebody would have, put emphasis or lay emphasis on the team to ensure that that vulnerability is closed. Also, there was risk management failure. Risk management failure. Equifax did not adequately assess the risk associated with outdated software and data security practices, right? So if they had carried out an assessment also, because the software you have developed for your customers or your consumers to come through, it's also an asset, it's an information asset within an organization, and it's an enterprise asset also. if you had carried out an assessment of risk on that particular asset, if Equifax had done that, they would not have been in this particular situation. Also, there was failure in compliance. The breach exposed the personal information of millions of customers, violating data privacy regulation, right? And especially when it comes to the PCI DSS, which is a payment card industry data security standard. If there is a breach to your payment infrastructure and it is a major breach, and the PCI DSS governed by a council, we call it the PCI SSC, Payments Card Industry Security Standard Council. If they come to carry out an assessment, they will send an auditor from them. Once they carry out an assessment and they're able to find out that the breach was caused because of a lot of negligence on your own part, then they fine you, right? And that is what happened in case of Equifax. They violated a lot of regulations, which exposed personal information of millions of customers, and also violating data privacy regulation. We have Wells Fargo. A lot of us know, we are familiar with Wells Fargo, right? There was a scandal in 2016 where it was revealed that Wells Fargo was opening fake accounts. And we see this happening in the financial institution, especially where you open an account in a particular bank for a particular, let's say, particular service that is rendered within the bank. And then over time, you see that you've been added to various other services in that same bank, which is not, is against your own, what's it called? Which is not your own consent. You opened for a particular service, but you see that you observe that they've opened a lot of other service because they have your information within their system. And that is what happened in case of Wells Fargo. So Wells Fargo, they were opening, in order for them to meet targets, they were creating fake accounts and enrolling customers in other financial products and services without the knowledge and consent of customers, which is also against a lot of other compliance requirements. So what happened was that there was failure in governance, risk management, and compliance. Governance, Wells Fargo had a culture of aggressive sales targets. Sometimes when I carry out what we call the enterprise risk management assessment and implementation for organization, when I meet with key organizations, for instance, key departments rather, for instance, business development or maybe management, some of the things I review is marketing targets, especially when I meet with marketing also or sales department. I review marketing targets. I ask them questions around how do you benchmark, how are you able to ensure that management do not set unrealistic targets within the organization? And a lot of them benchmark it with industry practices. What happened in Wells Fargo was that the governance body, the management, they pushed out targets that were unrealistic. For instance, you made as a company, you made $100 million within, let's say in 2024, you made $100 million. And then in 2025, you are projecting to make $2 billion. I think that is unrealistic. Because you made 100, you need to be able to understand your trends and patterns and how you can, if you make, let's say 300 or 400 or $500 million, that's a good one. But you can have a trend or you can have a target to say, okay, we made $100 million in 2024. In 2025, we want to make $300 million. That still makes sense, right? Instead of saying we want to make $2 billion. And that is the case of Wells Fargo. They set unrealistic targets for their staff, and you know how some of them can be when they want to meet targets. So they resulted to opening fraudulent accounts. So there was failure in governance in that aspect. There was also failure in risk management, because how on earth were they able to open various accounts for people without their consent? It means they had not carried out assessment of that particular product or system, right, within the organization. So the company failed to implement adequate controls to prevent fraudulent activity and lacked effective oversight of employee behavior. Also, there was failure in compliance. The bank violated consumer protection laws and faced billions in fines and penalties. Now imagine billions that you would have used to maybe do well as an organization, or maybe even help maybe carry out what we call what's the name of this thing when you you do public relations or something around that, right? Just to help the masses, or even help your staff, and you're using this money to pay fines, right? So there was failure in governance, failure in risk management, failure in compliance within Wells Fargo. Lastly, Boeing 737 Max, right? Few years ago, I think Boeing had like crashes within, I think within a month, like 2 crashes within a month, and there were inspections during those time to say those inspections are found out that bolts and other hardware on multiple planes weren't tight enough. Imagine having to board a plane that the bolts were not. Imagine having to board a plane that the bolts were not tight, right? And the hardware on those planes were not tight enough, right? And they had gotten to they failed to comply with a lot of requirements, regulations, and there was failure in governance, there was failure in risk management, there was failure in compliance, right? So in governance, there was communication breakdowns, and a focus on cost cutting may have contributed to the design flaws in the 737 MAX aircraft. Now, they were supposed to also make changes to some designs, right? They're supposed to make changes to some design. They're supposed to spend money on some controls within some of the aircraft, but they were trying to cost cuts, and which contributed to design flaws. And that is a governance function, because it is from the governing body where you cascade requirements, you push down instructions that, oh, this should be done, this should be done. And when we say governance is not only talking about maybe the boards. We can have the boards now set other governance domain, maybe governance in IT, governance in marketing, governance in this, governance in automobile department, governance in this department, right? Also, there was risk management failure. Boeing potentially underestimated the risks associated with a new flight control system, leading to 2 fatal crashes. So if they've carried out a risk assessment on the asset, which is the airplane, right? And the designs in place, they would have been able to curb this issue. Or if they've carried out a risk assessment on the people, because even the people are your assets within the organization, they would have curbed issues like this, right? And there was also failure in compliance. The Federal Aviation Administration faced scrutiny, because the Federal Aviation Administration is supposed to review and ensure that any air flight system or any air flight organization that do not follow requirements are told to follow requirements, or maybe their licenses will be withheld until they are able to follow. So at that time there was an audit, and they did not say anything about some of these findings. So they also face scrutiny for their lack of oversight of Boeing certification process before they were licensed to carry out operations, right? So these are just typical real life scenarios to open our eyes to what governance, risk, and compliance is all about, right? And I like to say that in nearly every major threat or business failure, you can trace the root cause back to a failure in at least one, and sometimes all 3 components of GRC. So if maybe there is a data breach, or maybe there's a failure in business, there's a failure in operations, there's a failure in a particular process or objective, right? You can tailor it to failure in governance or risk management or compliance. Or sometimes it is failure in the 3 within the organization, right? And this is to tell us the importance of GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, within any organization. And GRC is not just a cybersecurity thing, even though it sits in the heart of cybersecurity. Every organization, whether an organization that is heavy on core IT, IT systems, or organizations that are not really much on information technology systems, they need to have a GRC function within their domain, right? Governance failure can be lack of accountability, weak culture, or ethical lapses, right? Or failure, also poor leadership, or oversight or bad decision from people that are supposed to drive some of this instruction downwards. Also, risk management, failure to preparing for known or unknown threats, right? Or misjudging likelihood and impact of key events, trying to say, okay, this is not going to happen. So because we think it's not going to happen, we don't need to put controls in place. Right, and a sample example is the Equifax breach that occurred due to unpatched vulnerabilities. Also, there is failure in compliance, right? Breach of laws, standards, regulations, policies, maybe organizational policies, maybe regulatory policies, and other requirements, right? So, in light of this, what is GRC? What is GRC? GRC, which is short for Governance, Risk Management, and Compliance, is a unified framework that helps organizations achieve their objectives. You can see when I started with Volkswagen, I mentioned that Volkswagen had an objective, and I can tell us for free that every organization that I have used as an example within this training, they all have objectives within, maybe objectives for a particular year, or maybe objective for 3 years, or maybe objective for even a decade. They have objectives. So GRC will help you achieve your objective. Without GRC, you may not be able to achieve your objective as an organization. And then it helps you to manage uncertainty. That is where risk management comes in, and also helps you to act with integrity. That is where compliance comes in. Integrity to contractual requirements, integrity to organizational requirements, integrity to business requirements, integrity also to regulatory requirements, right? So there are some things that are mentioned about GRC that I want to clarify on this call to let us know that they may not be entirely true. And as a GRC manager or as a GRC person, you need to start, taking some of them off your mind, right? Because if you say you are a GRC manager, it means you have understanding, right, of maybe various domains and understanding of requirements and how they are able to integrate with themselves, right? So one of the myths of GRC is just about documentation. This is very, very wrong. If you're a professional that also preach this in the field of GRC, please, you need to stop it. GRC is beyond documentation. If you are coming to GRC to just come and do documentation, maybe you just go for a policy manager role, or go for a document manager role. Do you understand? So GRC is beyond documentation. And what I used to use as a typical example is, let's say for instance, you're an auditor in the GRC space, and you're auditing secure development lifecycle. You're auditing how applications are being built from conceptualization up to disposal, the requirements of the application, the design, the testing, kind of tests that are put in place. If you cannot interpret basic syntaxes, right, or you do not have an understanding of how that operation works, you will not be able to give value to the you are auditing. Or let's say you are even implementing some particular controls, or let's say you are auditing network security. You don't know how to, you do not have the knowledge of interpreting network diagrams. Right? If you see a network diagram you cannot interpret, the network diagram you do not have an understanding of, maybe various security controls, security groups, protocols within a network infrastructure. So ask me, how do you give value to the business, right? So GRC is beyond documentation. You need to understand how some of these tools work. Or let's say you're auditing mobile device management to like Jump Cloud or Sophos, MDM. If you don't understand how some of these things function, you may not be able to give value. So GRC is beyond documentation. If you have the mindset that you are coming to GRC because they mentioned that it is theory and it is easy for you to come into, please, you need to change that mindset, or you need to look for something else to do. Right. So also GRC is about compliance. No, in reality, GRC is a strategic enabler. Whilst most organizations, they see the GRC function as just a department, right, to ensure that they're in compliance with regulators. No, GRC is beyond compliance. It enables the strategy of the business and helps to align governance, helps to manage enterprises proactively, and helps to ensure business continuity and ethical integrity, not just for regulatory compliance. Also, being a GRC manager means you know everything. You cannot know everything as a GRC manager, right? Even though GRC sits in the art of cybersecurity, you need to know something about every domain in cybersecurity, but you cannot know everything. Sometimes when I carry out audits and there are some things that I do not know, I tend to learn on that audit, and then I go back to learn more about them, because you can be in some audit ground sometimes, or maybe you are implementing a particular control and there are tools that you're not familiar with, right? So you cannot know everything, but you can always learn and then get updated as a GRC manager. But you need to be vast when it comes to standard requirements, when it comes to tools also that are used within the GRC and the cybersecurity domain as a whole. Audit means everything is working well. No, right? In GRC, they think when auditors come, it means everything is working well. No, you have implemented various controls for, let's say, 6 months to 1 year, and then somebody is coming to audit you within 1 week or 2 weeks, and the person is telling you are secured. No, right? So because they might be lack of oversight in some places, right? So auditing does not mean everything is working well. As an organization, if you pass an audit, it means you still need to keep operating and then keep improving your process. GRC and cybersecurity are different domains. No, GRC is an integral part of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is also an integral part of GRC, so they go hand in hand. Having two software means you have GRC. No, if you have tools, you have software. In fact, there is a McKinsey report that says uh, 30 out of 100% digital transformation are successful. That is to say 70% fails. So it is saying an organization can have all of the tools in the world, but there will still be failure in the business, or maybe stunted growth, or they may not even get value from the tools that they have within the organization. So that you have tools and software does not mean you have GRC. There still need to be a function that is able to, synergize the tools, manage it with the people, manage it with the processes within the organization. Also, GRC slows down innovation and digital transformation. This is very, very wrong, especially the technology guys. They do not like to follow process in some cases, and they usually have issues with GRC guys because they just want to get things done, right? And we've seen cases where people want to get things done, they get it done faster, and then it costs the company a lot because they do not follow processes. I was in I was in a webinar yesterday, and the the presenter mentioned that you see a lot of organizations having secure system operating procedures in place, SOPs in place, and a lot of them are not even following those SOPs, right? And then there is stunted growth within those organizations, or you see the organization or the company being in silos, right? So I would also like to push some terminologies to us, within the GRC space, so that we have an understanding of what these things means. So we have what we call standards. Standards are not mandatory. Standard is a formal documentation or a formal document that provides agreed upon guidelines, rules, or characteristics for products, services, systems, or processes. And you see bodies like ISO, you see like IEE. ISO is International Organization for Standardization. IEE is International Electrical Electronics Engineering Committee. We have NIST and a lot of other bodies coming together, to develop standards. Right. So as I mentioned, standards are not mandatory. They are not mandatory. We have acts, right? Acts are mandatory. Sorry. Acts are mandatory, right? So act is a requirement that tells you what must be done, what you must achieve. And acts are usually enacted by the government. It can be maybe a national act, it can be a state act, right? So they are mandatory. For instance, the Clean Air Act, or the Data Protection Act. So whatever is signed into law becomes an act and carries more weight than standards, and it is mandatory. You must do them the moment you play in that jurisdiction. We have requirements. right? So requirement tells you I mentioned, right, an act is a law that is passed by a legislative body, right, that enforces you to do things. And then an act or a standard can have a requirement, right, which just outlines what you have to do to ensure that you are in compliance with that particular standard, or you're in compliance with that particular act, right? So you see requirements that are documented within standards and are documented within acts, right? And then we have regulation or regulators, right? So regulation or regulators are people that they enforce the acts that have been put in place. And even though I mentioned that a standard is not mandatory, the regulator can enforce and make a standard mandatory, right? So if a regulator enforces or tells you that you must implement a particular standard, then it becomes mandatory, and then you have to do it. You have to ensure that you do it. It becomes mandatory, right? And we also need to know that regulation supersedes standards. So a regulator can tell you to do something, whereas a standard is telling you to do something else. Let me give you a typical example. A standard can tell you that you have to keep information confidential, but a regulator can tell you that that information that you have kept confidential, we need access to that information. Because they are regulators, they have that right to be able to ensure that they get that information from you, right? So regulation supersede standard. For instance, I supported an organization in the UAE, and part of their requirement there is, if you want to be a payment service solution provider or a payment solution service provider, you need to use a cloud service provider that has an availability zone within the UAE. Now that is a regulation. That is a regulation by the regulator, right? So in as much as other jurisdiction may say you can use any cloud service provider, maybe you want to use Google Cloud, you want to use AWS, you want to use Azure, digital solutions, and the likes. However, if a regulation says you must use only this cloud service provider within this country or within this continent or within this domain, then you must do it, because that is the regulation that is coming from the regulator. So they can mandate some particular requirements, and you do not have a choice. If you are playing in that space, you need to ensure that you do them. We have certification, right? So a certification is the formal recognition that a product, system, individual, or organization meets specific requirements or standards. That's a certification. So a regulator can certify you and say, oh, you have met this requirement. A certification body also, we have people that we call certification bodies. They can also certify you that you have met a particular standard or a particular requirement from the regulator. And then you see certification bodies like ISO, maybe auditors, ISO auditors like ISC2, which is the International Consortium, like ISACA, right, and a lot of other certification body that issues certification. And then we have accreditation. The reason why I had to talk about accreditation is because as people coming into cybersecurity, right, you need to understand, you need to be able to understand what accreditation means, because I've seen cases, I will not mention names, but I've seen cases where people pay heavy for certifications that are not accredited. So you need to understand accreditation and know, you know, various accreditation bodies, for instance, like IES, which is International Accreditation Service, like UCAS, like CONFRAC, and a lot of them. And you will see some of these accreditation bodies on, let's say, certification bodies like TUV, certification bodies like PCB, BSI, and co. Right. So accreditation is very, very important. It gives weight to the certification that you hold. Gives weight to the certification that you hold. Right. And I see, because as auditors in the field also, auditors can come, you can present your certification and say, well, I'm a certified lead implementer but let's say the ISO 27001, and the auditor will tell you it is not acceptable. And the reason is because the auditors have gone through, maybe some of them have gone through the training, maybe gone through that particular certificate, training from that particular certification body, and they are able to identify that that training is not heavy enough, like that training is not enough to grant you competence, to give you understanding of that particular standard or requirement that you are being certified to. Right, so, and that's where accreditation sits. So it's a formal recognition of the certifying body to show that they are competent to perform certification, testing, or inspection. Sometimes they get their power from regulators, or sometimes they can be independent, right? So these are just some terminologies that I've put together to ensure that we're able to also get more knowledge in GRC. And we have various frameworks and standards under GRC. We mentioned that the governance risk and compliance, it's a unified framework. Now, we will not say that an organization just have a GRC department and they are doing nothing, right? Because if you want to achieve governance, risk management, and compliance, you need to implement some frameworks. These frameworks are called, some of them are called best practices because a lot of people have used it. And these frameworks are developed by experts in the field. You see people from government, parastatals, people from private entities, individuals, professionals in the field, experts coming together to look for a problem in a particular domain and then try to fix the problem. And that is why you see various committees designing various standards. There's a different committee that designed the ISO 27001 standard. There's another committee that designed the ISO 27701 standard. There's another body that designed the COVID 2019. So they come together to ensure that they're able to close a particular gap in a particular jurisdiction or function. And these frameworks are not the security. These frameworks are not security, or they are not the governance, are not just the risk management processes, they are not just the compliance processes alone, right? It is the combination of the organizational processes, policies, also the culture, because you will see companies implementing ISO 27001 or COBIT or PCI DSS, but they are just implementing it for compliance sake. They are not actually getting value from it. Why? Because the other part that will complement the framework that is being implemented, which is the organizational culture, which is the people, are not being done effectively. I gave a typical example of the SOP, where you see a company have an SOP in place and then they are doing something different, right, entirely from that particular SOP. So frameworks and standards, they complement also your culture within an organization. And we have various frameworks like the ISO 27001, which is the information security management system. And my advice, right, in the GRC spaces, if you are just coming into GRC, I think you should start with ISO 27001. And this is the reason, because a lot of the standards, the frameworks, the requirements that we have that helps to support organizations' objective contain security requirements. PCI DSS contains security requirements. NIST contains security requirements. SOC 2 contains security requirements. 27701, EPA, CIS controls, a lot of them contain security requirements. So 27001 can serve as a baseline for you to give you, and it touches various domains. For instance, the new standard, which is 27001 2022, has 93 controls. Now, the 93 controls have the capability of NIST, right? We do not have that in the 2013 version, but in the 2022 version, it has NIST capability. That is, it can tell you whether the control is there to help you identify a threat, whether it's there to help you protect a threat, whether it's there to help you detect a threat or a risk, whether it's there to respond or recover, right? And 27001 also talks about governance. Clause 5 rather talks about leadership and talks about governance. And a lot of other domains within the 27001 also talks about governance. Clause 6 talks about risk management. and some other domains within the 27,001 talks about managing risk effectively. In fact, implementing controls within your 27,001 is you managing risk within your organization or within where you are implementing the ISO 27,001, right? So it's the standard for information security management system, and it's a good place to start your career in GRC. I know I've started answering some questions that was asked during the course of the registration. We have the COBIT. COBIT used to be a standard for IT auditors, but now it's now an IT governance framework. Very fantastic framework. If you want to have you want to transform, there is to be a data transformation within your organization, or you want to get value from IT, right? Good service delivery from IT, you need to implement COBIT within your organization, right? It contains 40 objectives that starts from governance. Also, you can see governance contains risk management, contains compliance requirements. Also, we have the IPA, which stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act within the USA. So this is to protect sensitive health information from being disclosed without the patient's knowledge. Imagine someone prominent within a imagine the health information on of that person, going out without the person's consent, or without the patient's knowledge, or without the consent of the patient, right? So the acts helps to ensure that sensitive information, sensitive health data are protected from being disclosed. We have the PCI DSS, which is also another framework, which is information security, but focused on card holder data, which is payment card industry data security standard. And this is for organizations that process, collects, stores, or transmits payment card details, right? So they have to be in compliance with the PCI DSS. We have the NIST, we have the SOC, which is by the AICPA. We have SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. But you see, most security guys, they are much functional in SOC 2, because SOC 1 is focused on financial reporting. SOC 2 is focused on security, having 5 trust service criteria like your security, process integrity, privacy, and other criteria also, right? SOC 3 is just like an abridged version of SOC 2. So it's more like you do not want to push out, because SOC 2 will contain detailed information, tests that were carried out also. But SOC 3 will just, at the high level, a document that you can share with consumers or customers, and it will contain less confidential information. We have the ISO 27701, which is Privacy Information Management System. Is also a standard to manage our privacy within an organization. We have the GDPR, which also is standard on data protection for people, businesses that are in the European Union. And then we have CIS controls also, which is a very, very fantastic framework. Contains 18 controls. And why I love CIS controls, because it is prescriptive, while 27,001 and other standards might are descriptive. For instance, 27,001 will tell you carry out vulnerability assessment, but CIS controls will tell you the vulnerability assessment should be done so and so time. So it is prescriptive. It tells you what to do, and it contains core technical requirements. Core technical requirements, right? So these are some GRC frameworks that we can be familiar with. We have a lot of them, and you do not also need to know everything. For instance, I do not need to implement a particular framework, right, to know. I do not need to implement a particular framework, right, to know that framework, because my understanding of other frameworks that I've worked with will give me knowledge in implementing or auditing that that framework, right? So these are some standards frameworks that you can be familiar with, and we also help your GRC journey. We had some questions, right? That is about GRC. I would like to take some questions, but before I open up the floor for you to ask your questions, I would just like to read out some questions that we got from the registration. All right. So we have been able to pseudonymize the information that we got from the registration. So this will ensure that we cannot trace these questions to anybody. So when we say Chidima from the UK, we don't have your surname, we don't have your phone number, we don't have your email address. So it's just Chidima from the UK. We have lots of Chidima in the UK, right? So that people are not able to trace anything to anybody on the call, right? So we have Chidima from the UK said, how can I get more skills and websites to gain more knowledge? I think you just need to I've answered some of these questions, but also you need to follow. We have industry names in the field, and you need to follow these people. Sometimes they, push out push out information that can help you in the field. I've also opened a YouTube page, even though this recorded video will be one of the videos, will be the first video that will go on that YouTube page. The YouTube page will be focused on, teaching GRC, explaining how some of these controls work, explaining how some of the standards, and maybe sometimes you just take inputs, right, from people and say, okay, what do you want us to talk about? And then, we push that out on YouTube page. You can follow my link tree to subscribe, and so that you can get informations as we push out there, right? And then you can also reach out to me sometimes. I'll be able to help out, right? Emmy from Nigeria said, how important is GR to cybersecurity? I've talked about that. There's an integration between both. Very, very important. Rejoice from Nigeria, what's the best step to take to ensure a smooth transition and to keep oneself updated? If you are in any domain within the cybersecurity color that I mentioned, you're already in cybersecurity, right? But if you want to be in governance, risk, and compliance, that is where what you want to do. I've also mentioned you need to have an understanding of some of these frameworks, how they work, and you can start with 27001, right? Volunteer to also work with organizations, and you're able to, get hands-on knowledge, and then get familiar with some tools, also controls, that will help you. Busara from Nigeria said, how to land a remote international GRC role. Do I do the 27001 SAT or proceed to CISA, since I already have the foundational knowledge as well as some hands-on experience? See, certification is a major problem. In fact, it's a pandemic in the cybersecurity space, where you see recruiters saying they are looking for maybe interns, and they mention things like CISA or CISSP. Sometimes I just laugh and I'm like, who is crafting or drafting this stuff, right? If you are starting your role in GRC or cybersecurity, unless you have somebody that is pushing you, right? Maybe there's a requirement for you to do it. You have somebody. Let's say you started in GRC and you are working in an organization, and they said you must do CISA, and they want to pay for it. You can proceed to do it, but you should not start with CISA. It's a very, very wrong thing for you to start with CISA, right? Understand these frameworks. You can get relevant certification. You can even go for free certifications that are out there to start something, just to get knowledge and just give yourself some names, right? You can start with 27001. There are lead implementer certifications in 27001, lead auditing certification. We have 22301, which is business continuity, and we have other certifications. We have lead SOC 2 analyst, right, that you can start with. So once you are 1 year, 2 years in the field, then you can start looking at CISA. Right. Once you are 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the field, you can start looking at CISSP. I see, people that just came into the field and they are after CISSP. You don't need that. You don't need to start with that, please. Right. Build foundation, build capacity, so that once you have some of these certifications, you are able to, at least to some extent, you are able to say something about them and are able to defend them. And then how can you land a remote job? The internet belongs to everybody. Right? You go on LinkedIn, join some online job platforms, and also try to speak to people. If you have friends over there, speak to them, and then please build your LinkedIn page, because especially out of this part of the world, right? Especially when you want to get international job functions, right? Most of them is scraped through your social media pages, especially LinkedIn. They go to your LinkedIn, they see what you are doing, they see how you've been doing them. So also tell your story, some of the things you've been doing before you get a job. You can post them online, and have a good reputation out there. Also, right, and then you should be able to get a job, right? But if you are also coming into cybersecurity and GRC, please, the mindset of break into cybersecurity and start making money in the next 3 months is a very, very wrong mindset. I am not saying you cannot start cybersecurity today and start making money today. But if you are coming with that mindset that I want to start cybersecurity and make money immediately, it's a very wrong mindset, and you will be frustrated, right? Because cybersecurity GRC is not just about coming to make money. If you do not love it, I know money is very important. Trust me, I also like money. Understand? But if you are coming because of the money, and you are watching some of these videos online to say, start cybersecurity, start making $100,000 in the first 1 month, it's very, very wrong. Even though it is possible that you can start cybersecurity today and start making hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next 1 month, but please take away that mindset. Grow capacity, build capacity, learn first, learn, grow, and earn. Folashade from the UK says, how do I know I'm confident to land my first role? I was in a program, I think some weeks ago, and the lady mentioned something, which is audacity. I remember when I started off in cybersecurity, thank God for the company that picked me up. I had no knowledge in cybersecurity. They picked me up and they trained me, right? You can be lucky to get such company, but if you do not try, you may never know whether you are ready. I'm not saying you should go and take a job that you have no knowledge about, but if you have basic knowledge about something, you can start from there, and then you can start asking for help on the job, and then you can build and grow on that job, right? So just have the audacity, build your confidence, right? And then the moment you start getting to have more knowledge in some of these domains, how GRC work, I think you can go for it. I'm not saying you should lie in your CV. Do not lie in your CV. What you can do, what you've been doing, put it out, state it that you can do. So that by the time they're asking questions, because a lot of us, 80% of the things that we have in our CV, we cannot defend them. So why have a CV that you cannot talk about at least 50% of what you have on that CV? Right. So just have what you can talk about, that you know that if they wake you up tonight or wake you up anytime, you can say something about that. So ensure that you also act with integrity. You build a good CV, already contain some of the things you have been learning, things you have been doing, and then how you are willing to also learn and grow. Because especially in cybersecurity GRC, once you get into some companies, they still train you, except when they are looking for maybe some core professional functions, right? But apart from that, so once you get to any cybersecurity function, they still train you. So they just need you to have knowledge, basic knowledge of what you want to do. Natasha from Zimbabwe said, which initial certifications do you need to break into GRC? Please start with CC. If you do not have knowledge of cybersecurity or governance, risk, and compliance, please, everybody should go and learn ISC2CC, certified in cybersecurity. Very fantastic training, very clean and clear. It will show you the various domains in cybersecurity, and you'll be able to also understand your strengths there, right? So start with CC. Once you have CC is a good certification, even though it is out for free. The certification and the training costs close to $400, because the exam itself is $199, and I think the training is also like $199, right? That's $400, roughly $400, and it's a lot of money. So start with CC, right? I know of organizations that CC is entry level certification for them. If you're coming to the company, at least come with CC, right? So start with CC, and then you can start with maybe lead implementer in 27001, or lead implementer in BCMS if you are starting with business continuity management system, right? Or lead auditor if you want to steer your career towards auditing, but ensure that you understand how these things are being implemented. Naikiwala from Uganda said, what is the role of an IS auditor in governance, right? So to ensure that governance processes are in place, and then to ensure that governance processes are aligned with best practices also, right? Like Audit and, a lot of other ISO standard that, talks about governance, right? And then continually review governance process within an organization, and then advise governing body to ensure that they close some of the gaps that were identified. We have Frimpuma from Ghana. How do you start a GRC program in a small or mid-sized company? Very fantastic question. There's something we call interested parties, requirement of interested parties, clause 4.2 in your ISO standards, most of the ISO standards, whether information security, business continuity, service management, quality management, a lot of other standards, right? Even in your NIST and other requirements, you see them talking about interested parties. So you need to understand the requirements of interested party for that organization also. Now, what is the requirement of the regulators in the space, the jurisdiction that you function in? What are the requirements of your customers? What are the requirements of internal staff, people that works within the organization? What are the requirements of the stakeholders, shareholders, right? Key decision makers also within the organization. Once you understand their requirements, right, you'll be able to put up a GRC program in such organization, because you do not just want to start implementing everything. No. For instance, in our own part of the world here, we have something we call the CBN IT standard blueprint by the CBN, which they regulate the financial domain within our own part of the world here, right? So the standard, the blueprints they have in place defines each standard that you must implement. So you've already started putting your GRC program in place, right? And then to complement it, you put technology in place, you have good people in place, you have good culture in place, people that react with integrity, and then you have a good GRC program, and then you set a timeline, right? It is not also looking at the CBN IT standard blueprint, you will see that they have like a timeline of up to 3 years to say you can implement this standard this year, you can implement this one next year, you can implement this in another 2 years, so that they give you that timeline to be able to do these things without eating too much into the company's budget. What tools or frameworks are best for managing GRC effectively? I will not mention technical tools, right? I will not mention any particular technical tools, but let's even start with basic tools. Your Office suites, your Excel, your Microsoft Word, because as an auditor, as an implementer, as people that work within the cybersecurity function, you need to make presentations. So you need to have presentation skills. You need to have those tools in place. And then technical tools also, right? Like your MDM, EDR, your SIM tools, and other relevant tools also, right? Tools also that will support your infrastructure, right? And then we help good service delivery. How can GRC align with cybersecurity and business goals? I've talked about that. Chicks from Nigeria said, what are the challenges of GRC in the cybersecurity space that can deter newbies to embark on this journey? See, the truth is there are challenges in every domain in cybersecurity and GRC. In fact, out of cybersecurity and GRC, there's nothing you want to do that there will be no challenges. But some of the challenges might be maybe lack of understanding the roadmap. And I've tried to paint out how the GRC roadmap looks to you already, right? So lack of understanding the roadmap. Also, maybe lack of having somebody to run you through how some of these things work can be key challenges in GRC. And the mindset also, where people say, oh, GRC is about documentation, and you get to GRC and you see that GRC is beyond documentation. Like you need to be vast, you need to learn more, you need to grow more. So these are some of the challenges, right? And these are things that I know that you can work your way through. Faith from Kenya said, can one do GRC and another cybersecurity role at a go, right? So you can be in GRC and then you can be a SOC. You can be in SOC, you can be in pen testing. Yes, you can do that, but one will be dominant. So you need to build capacity, build strength in one. Once you are good in that, then you can go to other domains. Joe from Nigeria, was the best way to covering the whole aspect of risk management? Covering the whole aspect of risk management. I've been working on risk management for quite some years now. Last year, I unlearned a lot of things, right? So you may not be able to cover everything, like, but basic knowledge of risk management. Clause 6 in 27,001. If you're able to understand clause 6, right, risk management in 27,001, I think that cascades to other risk management domain like ISO 31,000 and let's say COSO and then maybe NIST risk management, right? So yeah, but you will still keep learning and you still keep getting better in understanding that. How do I go from learning about 27,001 to writing my own guideline, another document for a company, right? So I think I've talked about that. Then policies, you can go online. We have ChatGPT, we have Google where you can download some of these policies, just align it with your company's environment. Henrietta said, I would like to understand how beginners can get practical experience in GRC and what entry-level roles look for in candidates with GRC knowledge. I've talked about that. Okelo from Uganda, do you offer internship for GRC roles? My company does, but it's whenever they want to offer, right? But currently there's currently no offer out there, right, for internship. But I can tell you there are enormous opportunities. There are large opportunities. There are opportunities out there where you can get internship roles in GRC. Right. So I think I'll just open the floor for few questions before we call it a day. Yeah? If you have questions, please raise your hands. If you have questions, I'll call from the first person. If you have questions, thank you for joining the presentation. If you have questions, please raise your hands. Okay. I'm going to unmute everyone now, but hold on till I call your name before you unmute your mic and ask your question. Please hold on till I call your name. Right. Okay. So hold on. Let me call you before you unmute your mic. Okay.
Kenny, so Shay,
Okay, Shay.
some questions in the Q&A section of the chat. So persons ask, how do we go into ISO 27001? Is it to study it and know how it works? Then there's another one to you. How do you study all these frameworks? Are these tools downloadable to work with?
Okay. All right. Yeah. So the 27,001, the 2022 version, I think it should be out for free now because some of these standards are very costly. When they come out, they are costly because the last one was in 2022, but now it should be out for free. Just go on Google and Google. You should get it for free, right? Yeah, and then you can study them, get more knowledge. There's also 27,001, no 27,002. 27,002, we teach you how to implement the 27,001 standard, whilst the 27,003, we teach you how to implement the management clauses, clause 4 to 10 in the 27,001. So we can get some of these documents to get more knowledge about that, right? And we can what's it called? We can also go online, go to YouTube, watch some of these videos, right? And you can get more knowledge. And you can also follow up with me over time. We might be doing just talking about some of these things also, right? Yeah. Okay. So let's take thank you for that, Shay. Let's take Olorunfemi, Priscilla. Olorunfemi, Priscilla. Priscilla.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please, I wanted to ask how you mention that we should start first with the 27,001 for newbies that want to get themselves abreast with the GRC. So I wanted to ask, after the 27,001, which one would you advise us to go into next?
After the 27,001, right? Okay. So you can pick up any other standard, right? But there's something I also want us to understand. If you are going to work, let's say you are in the UK, let's say you are in the US, let's say you are in Nigeria, you are in any country, I think you should focus more, apart from 27,001, focus more on some of the standards that are widely used in your domain and your jurisdiction. Do you understand? So for instance, in the US is mostly known for, is it the US? Yeah, I think the US or the UK. Yeah, the UK rather. The UK is mostly known for SOC 2. You understand? So after 27,001, you may want to pick SOC 2, right? Because you will get more job as a SOC 2 analyst, right, than maybe other standard, right? So, but the moment you are able to go through 27,001 and you understand to some extent, trust me, I'm telling you that by the time you are picking up SOC 2, by the time you are picking up NIST, by the time you are picking up business continuity or other standards, you already have like 50% understanding, if not more than. You already have an understanding of what you of what you want to do with those other standards, right? So yeah, you can pick the BCMS, you can pick the NIST, but also understand the jurisdiction where you play in, and then you should be able to get more standards that are in that jurisdiction also. I hope that answers your question, Priscilla.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. We have Aminot Bile Somi. Aminot Bile Somi, you can ask a question. Aminot Bile Somi, please unmute and ask your question.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for this training. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, please. So I have a little bit confusion regarding difference between. So for someone who wants to switch from a financial auditor to an IT auditor, is it necessary to do GRC? And I'm kind of confused between the cybersecurities and IT auditors. I think there's a mix up there, so I need a clarification regarding that.
Okay. So IT audit is a function, it's a job role, right? It's a function within cybersecurity, within governance, risk, and compliance. Because if you want to manage risk, you need somebody to audit your IT infrastructure. If you want to be in compliance with regulatory requirements, for instance, ISO 27001 and X5, operational control, when you get to 5.30 something, it's speaking to auditing of people, processes, and technology. So when you carry out IT audit, you're in compliance, that's compliance, right? Also, you need to have a governing body to ensure that these things are reviewed. If the Equifax departments have an IT audit team that is properly governed and that have identified the vulnerabilities that was identified, there would not have been any breach, right? So IT audit is just a function, it's a job within cybersecurity GRC, right? And if you are switching from financial auditing to IT auditing, the principles of auditing still stands: integrity, due professional care, good reporting, and the likes. But what will change is you need to now have an understanding of the IT component, systems, infrastructure that you want to audit, right? Because it can be based on scope. They can tell you as an IT auditor, you know what, come and audit our AWS, or come and audit our, what's it called? Come and audit our, let's say, financial application, just one application, or come and audit like some series of applications, right? So, yeah, IT audit is just a function, is a job within cybersecurity, within GRC, right? I hope that clarifies your question.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you so much. So it doesn't mean that I don't need to do the ISO to 7,000 or what do you call it?
So,
The ISO that, yeah. Do I still need to do that this GRC certification if I'm switching to IT audits?
okay. So what makes you a good IT auditor? That's the first question I'll ask. Now, if you want to audit, let me look for something that is relatable. let's say I want to audit a laptop now. I want to audit the usage of a laptop. What are some of the things I will look out for? Number one, physical protection of that laptop. Number two, access control, password requirement, password length, who have access to it. Now, where do we get this access control requirements and the like from? We get it from frameworks. 27,001 has a control on access, right? Has a control on physical security, has various controls. So understanding how these standards and frameworks will also help you as an IT auditor, because also you want to audit business continuity. Okay, on this laptop, if this laptop is stolen, do we have a backup in place to ensure that the data on that laptop is kept? Now, where do you get that from? From business continuity, and maybe from relevant business continuity framework like the ISO 22301. Do you understand? So you need to know standards and requirements to be able to also carry out a good IT audit, because there is no systems or there is no application, there is no infrastructure that is built without basic control first. You think about access control, you think about backup, you think about security and a lot of other things like that. So when you understand 27,000 information security, you understand other requirements and standards, it gives you a good knowledge on how to carry out audits of applications and systems that you want to carry out. I hope that makes sense to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. Adana Agozie.
Hi, good afternoon,
Good
Kende.
afternoon.
Thank you for the training. Okay, so without wasting our time, my question is actually bordered around okay, I'm a legal practitioner and I have a background in anti-money laundering and data protection, and I intend going into GRC. So what's certifications do you think I should start with to grow in this field, and how can I marry them together?
You're already in GRC. You are doing AML. In fact, AML has to be one of the most powerful, don't let me say most powerful, one of the powerful requirements, right, in GRC. As long as you are doing AML, that's hot cake already. Like you don't need to say you want to transition into GRC. You are already in GRC, right? And there are a lot of things that you can do in AML. There are exams, like maybe exams, certified fraud examiner, certified fraud analyst, also be members of ACAMS or any other relevant association. And I know that some of these exams are not cheap, but these job functions they are scarce. Yes, I know that they are very scarce, right? And then once you are good in that regard, you will see companies paying for your paying for your certification, right? They pay for your certification. I know of someone that is going to write one of the exams soon, and the company is footing the bill because you are managing a function for them, and they also need you to be competent, right? Because they also need to boast to their consumers, or maybe boast to their people that they are in contract with, right? So that we have somebody that is certified, that has more knowledge, this and that, right? So I don't think you should do anything around transitioning again. But if you can get more knowledge, I'm not saying you cannot get knowledge on other framework standards, or you cannot try to gain mastery in other requirements, but you are already in GRC, and I think you are doing well, and you just need to also build up on what you have. I hope that's good.
Yes, thank you.
All right. We have I'll take one more question from someone, and then I'll read some of the questions we have in the question box. Right. Yeah, Chinyere, please unmute and ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chinyere. I can hear you.
My question is based on this last question. I want to know, because so far I've noticed that people that go into GRC are mostly people that studied law. I want to know if it's like mandatory something for people that studied law, although I'm in the offensive part. But I just want to know.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So I would like to say that's not true. GRC is not for people that studied law, right? Because we have compliance here. Because we have compliance, you will see that most time people think GRC is because we have compliance and people think it's legal and compliance thing. No, anybody can do GRC. Anybody, whether you're in engineering, whether you're in this, you're in, anybody can do GRC. And I mentioned through the course of the training that you can, you should, every business should have GRC, a GRC function. Every business, right? And everybody needs to have an understanding of what governance, risk, and compliance is, right? So it's not a law thing. I've seen people from engineering, people from maybe biology background, people from this and that coming into GRC, right? So yeah, as long as it's something you want to do and it's something you know you can do, yes, you can do it, then you are welcome. Yeah. So we have a question, we have some questions here. How can an individual get certified in PCI DSS assessment? So most times it is hard as an individual to go straight to the council, right, to become a PCI DSS QSA, qualified security assessor, right? So most times you have to go through an organization that is already that has the PCI DSS license to carry out an assessment, and then they can, help you get to become an assessor, right? It's usually hard to go as an individual to say you want to be certified to PCI DSS, to be a PCI DSS QSA, because the exam can be very costly and something very, very serious also, right? Can you walk us through how a GRC framework can be used to maintain 27001 compliance? 27001 in itself is a framework under GRC, right? So except you want to clarify that question, what are the most challenging technical requirements in PCI DSS version 4.0? And how can they be? That will be when we are going deep into PCI DSS. But the truth is, any technical requirements in PCI DSS can be challenging depending on the strength of the organization, right? So some companies may not really have much technical expertise or much people to manage that function, and it can be a challenge to them. And then how can PCI DSS compliance be harmonized with GDPR? Yes, that's why I said you must understand what's it called? You must understand this requirement, right? So when you understand the requirement, you'll be able to integrate those requirements. For instance, there are security policies within the GDPR that must be developed and must be implemented. There are also security policies within your PCI DSS. So you may not need to have different security policies, different implementation, different security controls for each of the standards and requirements. So what you can do is to harmonize and implement them. So it takes someone that understands these requirements, right? So I have integrated requirements from 7 standards before, right? I integrated requirements from 7 standards, 7 different standards, right? Before, coupled with the NIST and other standard, because I have an understanding of all of those standards, right? So, and I know if this is saying this is what it actually means, right? So understanding is one of the most important thing, right? How do we ensure technical personnel adhere to the SOP? Yes, if you have good governance body that ensures that people do things the way they are supposed to do things, it starts from governance. The moment there's a failure in governance, whatever thing you put in place will not work, right? So if you have good governance body and then there's constant audits and reviewer of the adherence to these things, right? You will see that people will sit up and ensure that they are there to it. Yes, is there a way to audit GRC process? Yes, that's what I do. I'm an auditor in the GRC space. I audit controls, standard requirements. So yeah, you can audit them, because in auditing them, IT audit is also part of auditing this process. In auditing them, you'll be able to say how these things are, and you'll be able to also tell them how they can improve on them, right? So can you explain the difference between SOC 1 and SOC 2? SOC 1 is focused on financial reporting, SOC 2 is security, right? So which contains 5 trust service criteria, but SOC 1 is focused on financial reporting, right? I am a financial auditor. Okay, we've talked about that, right? So let me give room for 2 more questions, and I think we can call it a day, right? Let me give room for 2 more questions. Right, we can call it a day from there. If you have any more questions, please you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can also hold on till when I upload the video on my YouTube page. Maybe you want to rewatch. If you have questions, you can drop it in the comments. I will answer your questions as soon as I am able to answer them. So let's have Elizabeth. How do Elizabeth?
Everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kinde, for the session. So my question is around the different roles in GRC. How can one navigate their path through? Say if you want to study, like you want to become a GRC analyst or a GRC auditor, is it the general certification or there are particular certifications for each role?
Okay. All right. So how to understand GRC roles, right? So in our own, I'm using our own part of the world because we know how things are here, right? And I know that every other country have how things work there also. But in other countries, they may have rules specified. For instance, the role of a risk manager is a job on its own. Somebody's job, a risk manager. The role of lead implementer for the information security of the organization is a role. Documentation manager is a role. Business continuity lead implementer, business continuity lead auditor are roles. Right. So, but if you say you're a GRC manager, I think you need to understand how some of these things work. Even though when you get a job in some companies, they can say they need a lead implementer for their 27001. Or sometimes they may even tell you they need an implementer for a particular framework you have not done before. But it can be a security framework that you have, at least you have knowledge of 27001, and it can help you to implement that. You can go for such jobs. Right. So just try to understand these frameworks and requirements, right, to some extent, and I think you can function in any role. For instance, if you're able to implement 27001 from start to finish, you have already done a lot of roles there already, because you have done things around compliance, you have done things around risk management, you have done things around managing governance, and a lot of other things like that. So you can be a risk manager, can function as a risk manager. You've done things around business continuity, you can function as a business continuity manager. You just need to now get more knowledge on the core aspect of business continuity. Do you understand? So yeah, I think once you are able to understand how GRC works, how some of these requirements works, then you're able to function in any role that you want to function in. But sometimes you will see roles like GRC manager. So, and sometimes you get some of these jobs, you are not even doing anything. They just want you to come and sit in as a project manager, because they have people that are managing each of those processes. So they will just bring you in as a GRC manager. You'll be the one following up with this, following up with that. So depending on the company's need. Right. Let's have Ifoma Odujobi, and I think we'll call it a day from there. Let's have Ifoma Odujobi. Ifoma Odujobi, can you unmute and ask your question?
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I've been hearing a lot about GRC, but at this point, I'm at crossroads. So when I saw it on LinkedIn, I was like, oh, I think I should attend this webinar. So let me give you a background. I am engineer by training, and I started in customer service. And during the customer service, someone spoke to me about doing CISA, because I was trying to move to another role from customer service. So one of the people that interviewed me within the company told me about CISA, and I didn't know much about it anyway. So he did the training for me. He was CISA. So he did the training for me and I wrote the exam and I passed. So because some of the modules there, of course, the modules on network, this thing, I was already familiar with it from my university days and IT and the rest of it. So, but the role was actually given to somebody else, and in the course of the whole work thing, I got another offer now in FMCG, where the CISA wasn't really, in short, I found myself in project engineering. So now I want to come back to like core IT, and I'm wondering, I've been reading a lot by myself, self-study on AI, and I realized AI had a lot to do with data and the fact that any wrong data, if the data is not properly managed, if it's not governed, it can, escalate into something else. So I was like, okay, where do I transition into? And I started saying GRC, AI governance, data governance. So I'm like, which one? So I just said, okay, let me ask, what do you advise for someone that is at this crossroads now?
Yeah, thank you for that question. But if you followed, I'm usually skeptical about telling people to do this and do that. See, you have to look for what you like to do. And let me tell us one thing here.
Okay,
Growing up also from school, I knew I was going to be in IT. I knew I was going to
okay,
do technology, but I do not know the part of technology. But I
okay,
know that if I find myself in any company, I am going to thrive and I'm going to do well. I believe so much in myself that I'm going to do that, right? So I started off with, networking, programming, developing other applications. I was doing this, doing that, going from this to that, learning one or two things. So when I got my first job out of college, right, out of college, it was the company that took me in to come learn cybersecurity. Now, this is the thing. If I had gotten another company that took me in to be a network engineer, I would not be here. There's every possibility I will not be here because
okay,
I would drive my career and steer it towards network engineer and be an authority in that space. I'll probably be doing this, but maybe in the networking space. Do you understand? So it is
okay,
important that you do what you want to do, like what you love to do. Do you understand? So
okay,
if there's a possibility of learning more and getting better in more, and then for instance, to some extent, I'm trying in GRC, right? Sometimes I call some of my colleagues and say, yeah, come and run me through this thing. They are in other domains in cybersecurity, and then I learn what they are doing. So it's not like I'm not learning because I want to work there. I'm learning because I want to also build up on my own knowledge. Do you understand? So you need to look at over time from the other companies that you have worked in, the knowledge you have gathered over time. If you put it in AI governance, is it going to function well there? If you put it in GRC, is it going to function well there? If you put it in this, is it going to function well here? If you not come out with a particular answer, say, okay, I'm going to function well here, you can go into that domain, do your best there, get functional there. Once you are good there, you can start learning other domain. Or if you can even do it like side by side, as you are getting better in this, you are learning this also. Right. So you cannot uh, um, want somebody to tell you that do this or do that, right? So you need to sit, and especially I used to talk about behavior, also behavioral pattern in coming into any cybersecurity field or GRC, right? Also understand your strength as a person. Who are you as a person? What's your strength, right? In understanding your behavioral pattern, you also be able to tell where you are going to function well, right? As a person within any jurisdiction. For instance, if you are nonchalant, I don't think you can function well in the SOC, right? Because SOC, you have to be detailed, you have to be careful, you have to be able to review things. Or maybe in financial departments, you have to be very careful, you have to be detailed and the like. So you need to be able to also look at your behavior, the kind of person you are, the knowledge you have gathered over time, and see where you are going to do well. And trust me, if you also believe in yourself that you can do whatever you want to do, you will do it. The challenges will be there. I don't like to sugarcoat and say break into cybersecurity and do this, and that's a big lie. The challenges are there. Even the experts in the field, those people you are looking up to currently, there are challenges. I myself, I have challenges. There are people that I hit a crossroad. I still have to call them and tell our boss, please help me in this. I don't know this. I don't know that. Sometimes I can leave my house to go and learn, go to someone else's place to learn. You understand? So the challenges will be there. Whether you are going to AI governance, you are coming to GRC, you are going to do, so you are going to that. Wherever you are, the challenges will be there. But as long as you believe in yourself and then it's something you want to do, I think you can. I know that you can do exceptionally well there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Olamide said, can we get your contacts? I think you can reach out to me across my social media platform. If you go through my LinkedIn, if you can scan this barcode, or you go through my Linktree, Linktree/cybercadabra, right? You can follow up with me there. Also, if you want to get this video on the YouTube page, right? You can also go through Linktree. You will not see any video there because I'm just starting out to put out videos there. This will be the first video on the YouTube page, right? And subsequently, there will be more videos that we talk about cybersecurity and a lot of these other standards and frameworks, right? So we can go through the Linktree, subscribe, and get ready as it comes in. Yes, very good. AI governance is also GRC. Do you understand? I just wanted her to say you want to focus on it because AI governance can take a lot of your time, also may not allow you focus in other domains, right? But AI governance is also GRC, so governance, risk, and compliance. Do you understand? But you mentioned 3 governance, right? I could not remember the last one. So if you want to be in AI governance, you want to be very good in AI governance, go to GRC, learn AI governance, then learn other domains also, right? This Selena, I'm a legal practitioner. I have a good knowledge of data protection laws, but I've done more of litigation. How do I transition fully into GRC? It's a bit difficult to get compliance rules due to the fact that my core experience is in litigation. Yes, just learn it. Just learn it from the things we've talked about today. Just learn things in GRC. Yes, third-party access management is related to GRC also, right? It's also a part of cybersecurity. It's related to GRC. In fact, I supported an organization to carry out an assessment on 10 different companies, which they are third parties, right? That was, I think, last year or 2 years ago, right? So yeah, Selena, please just learn it, get better at it. The knowledge you have from data protection laws is fantastic already, and I think you would also, if you start picking up these GRC frameworks, you will see that you will do well. You will do well because you already have some of this knowledge, and you are going to get. And I know that you will get jobs that will even come to you because they now know that you have data protection understanding, and then you now have understanding of frameworks, requirements, standards, and the likes, right? They will want to come for you. So just keep learning and keep growing, right? So guys, my LinkedIn handle, just search for Kendi Ologun or go through my Linktree. Go through my Linktree, Linktree/cybercadabra, linktree.ee/cybercadabra, or scan this barcode, right? So yeah, just go through that, right? So guys, I know we have lots of questions. Please, I would like to draw the curtains now. Then I wish everybody, yeah, you guys can, we are going to leave few minutes for people to connect. So people can drop their LinkedIn. I can see Simi dropping her LinkedIn. Yes, Simi dropped her LinkedIn. You can also, everybody can drop their LinkedIn here, and then you can get to connect, meet with each other, talk more about this, right? So we'll just leave the call for another 5 minutes for people to connect, people to drop their LinkedIn on the chat box, and then we'll close the training proper, right? So thank you everyone for joining this training. Please enjoy the rest of your day. I'll leave the call to Shay. You can pick up from here. Thank you everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Kenny, for the impactful section. Thank you myself. I really learned a lot from everything you've said. Okay, so for the people asking, we'll be rolling out some flyers for training on 27,001 NIST framework, SOC 2, audit and review, and every other areas in GRC, policy writing. So if you're interested, you can reach out to me on the group. You can reach out to me on the group. I'll leave a message so that we can also connect and we'll see any other thing that we might need. So I know there are a lot of questions here that Kenny has not been able to address. You can also still connect with him or drop your questions in the group as well. Or you can reach out to me if you need any other answers. Thank you very much for joining this session. Hope to see you next time. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.